Today, we're talking about a marketing strategy called upsells and how you can use upsells to double or sometimes even triple your revenue with this one tactic. So if you are someone who would love a really easy way to increase your revenue, definitely make sure you watch the full episode or listen to the full episode if you're on the podcast to hear all the tips about upselling. And at the end, I'm even going to walk you through how I upsell my clients in my stationery business. And I will show you exactly the format that I use for upselling. So let's start with what is an upsell. It's a sales strategy. It's when you encourage someone to purchase, a higher priced package or more premium offering to someone who's already considering purchasing that product or service, right? So you already have someone who's ready to buy, or they may have even purchased from you. And so now you're going to try and upsell them into what that premium, what that next level package is going to be. So it's a strategy that you can use in a number of different ways. And it's a great way to get just more money out of your existing leads and a higher average order value out of your clients that you have already. A lot of people think about upsells and they think, is it spammy? I don't know if I want to be this, sort of direct in my sales message. How do I do this in a way that doesn't feel gross and icky to me? So here's how you can do it in a way that feels really good for your business. The first thing is just in general to think about selling as helping, right? At the end of the day, you are helping your clients when you're selling them. Everything you offer, whether it's, art for somebody's home, to photography, to stationery designs, is a way to help people. And so by offering it to them, all you're doing is solving a problem for them, right? You're solving anything from, a self-esteem or decor problem, all the way to, a literal problem of, they need thank you cards to say thank you. And so you're the one that's selling it to them. The way I like to think about sales is, you're offering something, you're not pushing it on them, you're not forcing it on them. A great example of this is if you're over somebody's house for dinner and they offer you dessert, right? Upsells is the dessert. So you are already at the meal, you've already enjoyed the time with them, and then they offer you the sweet treat at the end, right? So nobody would ever think of dessert as gross or spammy, right? If somebody just offers you dessert at their table, you say, thank you so much. Either you say, no, thank you, I don't want the dessert, I'm full. Or you say, yes, thank you, I would love whatever that dessert is that you're offering. So that's the exact same way that you should think about upsells, right? It's, giving your clients something, just like a little extra that they might enjoy, right? And you're offering it to them. That's it. Either they want it or they don't want it. A lot of people think that upselling is not a creative service based thing and that it's only like a product based thing. So you might have heard about upsells before if you have encountered any sort of like e-commerce messaging, or if you run a store yourself, or if you run an e-commerce store. They talk about upsells and order bumps a lot, but nobody really talks about it from a service perspective and, how you can actually use upsells in your business. I use it in my business all the time. It's how I increased my average order value, 2-3x. And when I offer upsells to my clients, I usually find, half to 2/3 are purchasing something extra, after they've already purchased from me. What's really funny about upsells is, when you're thinking about a service business, you've probably been told before to offer 3 packages, right? When you're doing a proposal or a discovery call with them. And so in your proposal, you have a lower package, you have the medium package, and then you have the higher package with all the bells and whistles. And, typically your customers are choosing your medium option, right? They're choosing, the Goldilocks option in between, the lowest and the highest, right? And so you really want to focus on making that Goldilocks option exactly what you want to sell and exactly what they're asking for. And then, sometimes you'll get people picking the highest price, sometimes you'll get people picking the lowest price, but most of the time people are picking that sort of middle option because they think that's the best value option. If you are getting a lot of people picking your low end option or you're getting a ton of people picking your high end option, then something's wrong with your pricing or your positioning in the market or your sales strategy, right? You should be getting most people kind of picking that middle. And what I've found is that I can have, my higher tier option be the one that has, all the bonus accessories like ribbon or envelope liners or, wax seals, like things like that, all the extra upgrades. And, people will turn that down in the initial proposal. They'll pick the second option that has, no upgrades or fewer upgrades. But then when I offer it to them a second time after we've, already started working together, I send them the onboarding form and I share with them the option to purchase those additional accessories again a second time. A lot of them end up doing it. And so it's really funny that, a lot of people are passing up that third package just simply how it's presented. But then when I present those individual items that were from the third package to them a second time, a lot of them opt into it. And so essentially they are picking that third package. They just don't even know that they picked that third package. It, happened at the second point of sale. So that's, something that I've found really interesting about upselling, and a great way to get more people into that third tier packaging that you offer. So you can do this for service businesses. It doesn't have to be products. And I'm going to walk you through a couple of different examples. So for one example, we have a photographer, right? So typically a photographer is offering services like, a 10-hour package versus an 8-hour package versus a whole weekend package, right? You're kind of packaging those different offerings based on the time that you're spending, based on the amount of photos you're delivering, and any other sort of premium service offers that you can think of. So there are two main ways for photographers to take advantage of this right away. The first is by offering some products that are complementary to your service, right? So you can offer photo albums, and I'm sure a lot of you are doing that. You can offer guest books. You can offer framed photo printing, right? So if you're seeing that people aren't really taking you up on buying actual prints of photos because they think they can just go get them printed at Walgreens or whatever for cheaper, you can actually offer, maybe something more premium like a framed print, right? In a really excellent frame, and, source those in bulk so that you're making a ton of profit on the individual frames. From a service perspective, a great idea would be to offer a discounted package that includes bridal shower, rehearsal dinner, welcome party, right, with editing and delivery after the wedding. So you can bundle it with the wedding photography package, like when you're actually editing and delivering those. So it's not taking you a ton more time. You're able to batch them all together. Or if you're working with an outside editor, you're able to send them all kind of in one package to that editor and really leverage that editor's time well. The reason why this works is because after you've already booked them for your wedding, you've already done the hard part, right? They already want to work with you. They're already a customer. And it's been proven that your existing customers are some of the best people to sell to because they are just generally like cheaper to sell to. They're easier to sell to. It's much less of a leap to get them to buy more from you once they've already bought one thing from you. And so what I would do is, reach out, 1 month or 2 months before the wedding and say, hey, I'm so glad, you booked this package with me. You can also add on this, bonus package, bundled with my wedding services. It's much cheaper than if you had booked it separately, and give them some sort of, bundling offer there. The other thing you could do is reach out to them and say, hey, I know you booked the 10-hour package, but now that you're closer to your wedding date and you've had a little bit more time to plan your wedding, just wanted to see if you wanted to add any hours onto that package, right? So a very simple email like that, you can even automate it to go out 2 to 3 months before the date as like a check-in email, will not only give your client better customer service, right? Because one of the things I see couples complaining about the most about wedding photographers is that, they talk to them in the beginning and then they don't talk to them again for 6, 9, 12 months, and that there's no sort of check-in. And so they're a little bit nervous that maybe the photographer is going to bail. So you can actually make this a point of customer service elevation by just, scheduling it and having it be a check-in, and, offering them additional hours at that point. And you'll be surprised by how many people will take advantage of that and book additional hours or book additional services like for their bridal shower or for their rehearsal dinner or their welcome party. Another example is an artist. So again, some products that they could be selling that are complementary to their existing services are things like framing. So that's one of the things I do is I do a lot of commissions where I'm doing portraits, watercolor portraits, and so I offer an option with a frame. Super simple. I get the frames for like $4 on Amazon, and then I'm selling them back to the customer for $20, right? And so a lot of people will buy the frame when they buy the portrait, and they'll buy it, kind of bundled together right at that first point of sale. Because they're giving it as a gift, right? And so it makes it for a much nicer gift if it's framed versus not framed. And so part of that packaging is what you're selling. The other thing you could think about are digital scanned in copies of your artwork, right? So if you're doing a commission for somebody, they think they're getting, just the original painting, but then when you're finished with the commission, you offer them the ability to also have a digital version. That's something you might want to consider, depending on what kind of artwork commissions you're doing. The other thing I think could be interesting is thinking about fade insurance or some sort of insurance on the actual artwork, especially if they've paid a lot of money for it. Some sort of, if your print fades within the next 5 years in the sun, like most of the time, you can't really help a print from, eventually fading a little bit if it's placed in direct sunlight. And so, offering some sort of insurance, and you offer it via a credit of $100, let's say, towards a new print of that same artwork, or, towards a new commission. And you can sell that as like a $25 offer. To me, that's kind of a no-brainer, right? As a customer, $25 to get $100 back potentially is a really good deal. But what you'll find, and the way you'll make money, is that 99% of people are never going to come back to you within that 5-year period, or maybe you make it shorter, to claim the insurance, right? To claim that $100 credit. And so that's how you're going to be able to make up the difference there is, for 1 out of every 100 customers that claim that $100 credit, 99 of them are not. And so you're going to be making all of that money in the meantime. So that's, an option to offer as well as some sort of, reassurance policy. And then from a service perspective, you could also offer matching pieces at a bundled price or at a larger size. Like, for example, if you're commissioned to do an art piece and, just to do one piece for somebody's home, after you sell the first piece of it and, you're working through the process, maybe it's after the sketch, or maybe it's after the painting's finished, or maybe it's even during the onboarding process, you could say, hey, it'd be really great is if you had 2 of these, right, that matched, right, if you had complementary pieces in your home, and offer that to them. Another thing would be, upgrading the size. So that's one that I'm actually going to start doing with my portraits is, once they order the 5x7, say, hey, here's the 5x7. Let me know if you want to upgrade to the 8x10. It really does make, a much better gift size. So let me know if you want to do that. Some people don't realize how big the 5x7 actually is when they order it. And here's a special offer, in order to upgrade. So maybe make it less than the price it was to actually buy the larger sized option up front, right? So right now I'm selling, a 5x7 for $150, let's say, and then I'm selling the 8x10 for $300, for example. I could offer them a one-time chance to upgrade to an 8x10 after they've purchased their 5x7, and offer it to them for, $175, right? $25 more, or even $200, right? So it's only $50 more. And so that's, a really great value and a perceived discount. Even though, painting an 8x10 doesn't take me that much more time, and, it doesn't take up that much more cost. So, any additional money I could get to upgrade them into that 8x10 would be worth it. And then my third example is a graphic designer. So graphic designer, if you are typically selling things like designing logos or designing branding or designing websites, a great example of, something to add on to a logo would be to sell additional variations of the logo, right? So if they just purchased, one logo design, just, having the logo built, you could then say, hey, I'm so glad you love the logo. If you want to buy additional variations for all these different use cases, right? Like you need a fave icon, you need a version that's square, you need a version that's horizontal, you need a version that's vertical, right? You need a version that works for all of these different use cases. Give them an offer at that point to purchase that logo variation kit. Or you can offer some sort of, how to use your logo, like upsell them into branding once you've created the logo. So those are some options there. The other thing from a service perspective that I think would be really interesting, and I've seen some graphic designers do this, is to offer some sort of monthly retainer or some sort of editing service after you've sold them the original piece. So this would be really great for website designers, for example. After you've built the original website, months down the line, they're going to need to come back and make tweaks or make changes. They're going to want to refresh pages. They maybe want to add pages. So putting them on some sort of monthly retainer after that and say, hey, for, this fee per month, you would have me on staff to make up to, 3 pieces or, 3 pages or, make up to 5 edits a month, like whatever makes sense for your business model and your timing. Give them a sort of concrete thing. I wouldn't make it unlimited, but sell, use that as a chance to upsell yourself into some sort of monthly retainer with them. Or again, like some sort of editing package, like, hey, you're going to need to update your website at some point. I would love to, talk to you about what your plan is for editing your website down the line. Here are the different packages that I offer for that. So that's a really great example. All right, so now I'm going to walk you through my upsells. And so I'm actually going to show you, the different pages that I use in order to upsell my clients into different things at each point in the buyer journey. So I offer upsells at the onboarding stage. I offer upsells actually before the onboarding stage. I offer upsells during the initial proposal. I offer upsells during the onboarding phase, and I offer upsells towards the end when we're like almost finished with the process. So that's a really great framework for you guys, and I'm going to walk you through it exactly. Okay, so I'm going to show you inside of my Dubsado and walk you through a couple of the different ways that I upsell and double or sometimes even triple my client orders. If you haven't heard of Dubsado, it's my preferred CRM. It allows you to send invoices. It allows you to send forms and proofs to people. So I use it for my onboarding in every stage of my custom design process and my semi-custom design process. It also lets you send contracts and set up automations. So it's really awesome. If you are looking for a new CRM, definitely check it out. And if you look below, I have a link with a discount code for you in the show notes or below this video. All right, so let's take a look. So this is my onboarding form. You're getting a really good sneak peek into my onboarding process and what my onboarding form looks like. And I'll show you exactly how I do upsells in a very non-spammy, organic way. So after they've signed the contract and paid their invoice, I send them this onboarding form, and I have several different versions of it, whether they've, ordered different types of, semi-custom designs. I have one for custom. I have one for save the dates, etc. So I have different onboarding forms saved here in Dubsado. So I just pick the right one, send it to them. I update their product timeline, and so I show them their product timeline, I show them their package details, I have them confirm, and then I have, kind of a basic questionnaire, right? So I'll ask them all the details that I need to know for all of their different pieces that they ordered, their mailing addresses, etc. And then we get down to production details. For semi-custom, they have options that they can select from. So I have this production details in any of my semi-custom onboarding forms where they can pick their envelope color, they can pick their text color, right? Any sort of options I have that are limited, I have them shown here, and then they can pick from them. And then we get into the section that I put as add-ons, and I put optional next to it. So it's very clear that these things are additional options. They can skip it if they want, but it's, kind of in its own section. And these are my upsells, right? So it's very basic. I delete things if they've already added them to the package, and just, use this instead to collect their information. So I'll actually move it up, like if they've already purchased wax seals, and just have them pick their color from here. But it's a great way to present them all of the different options for accessories that they potentially add on and the pricing for it. So I have right here, the color, the quantity that they want, if there's any sort of minimums that they have to purchase, what the pricing is, and then an example of the different colors and what the product actually is. So I have that for wax seals. I have that for vellum wraps and bands. I have that for ribbon, right? So if they didn't add it on in the original package, they can add it on here very easily, very simple. They know the pricing right up front, so they can add it on there. I also do this actually before I've sold them anything. Here's an example. So here's a recent proposal that I sent out. I actually create a custom web page. We can talk about this in another video, perhaps, what my proposal process is. But I send them, this really detailed proposal. It has their 3 packages. And then underneath, I have an add-on section, which is essentially my upsells section, right? So if I didn't include it in one of these packages, or they were just curious what it would cost if you wanted to take it out of a package, I have the pricing right here for them. And I have, some common options. If they wanted to add on hand calligraphy, if they wanted to add on wax seals, if they wanted to add on tracked and insured paper box mailing, they have all that stuff there. So that's another opportunity for upselling, while I'm selling the main product. And then when I go into the onboarding, I'm presenting a number of those same options here a second time, so they can add them on. After this point in working with me, I don't push these things. But what you could also do is if they didn't choose any of them, or they were maybe on the fence about it and they weren't sure. Sometimes I'll have couples that are like, oh, we really love wax seals and vellum wrap, but we're just not sure if we need both. I'll say, why don't you wait until the proofs? When we get to the proofs, I'll present you with both options again, and you can see it in context of the whole suite mock-up. So this is an example of proofs that I would send them. So in our first round of proofs, when I'm sending them their invite, their details, their reply card, I'll send them a mock-up of what this looks like, and I might include, one of those accessories that they were thinking about. So it's very common for people not to be really sure if they want something, but then when they see how plain it looks without it, or they see how great it looks with it, then they're more enticed to buy it. So this is a second opportunity to upsell, is actually within your proofs. You kind of give them an example of what it would look like with that accessory. And then you can, include like a little checkbox on the accessory. Like, I don't have it here, but, do you want to move forward with this accessory? Yes or no. And, I put the pricing there. So again, it's very, very clear what it's going to cost and how it's going to change their invoice if they want to add this on. The third place that I upsell is in my, is at the very end of working with them. We then get into mailing. And so, this is something that I would send regardless of whether I was trying to upsell them something or not. But I do like to make a note if I'm mailing on behalf of clients, or if they're mailing themselves, that, this is in my contract, but I'm just reminding them that it's normal for the postal service to take anywhere from a week to up to 4 weeks to deliver their mail if they're using standard stamps. And that, 3 to 5% of their mailing is actually going to get returned to them or might get lost. So, want to make sure they're ordering extra. But this is also just an opportunity for me as a stationery designer to remind them that it's not my fault if things get lost or damaged. It's USPS's fault. And then I have been encouraging a lot of my custom couples, especially since they're already investing in thousands of dollars worth of stationery, to really consider trackable mailing and actually putting a package label on that. So I explain why here, and I explain, if you still prefer to use stamps, that's totally fine. We have plenty of clients, so it's not necessarily a scare tactic, right? I'm giving them the option not to use it, but if they do want to, here's what that looks like. And so I'll send them different options, using plain rigid mailers, for example, and just putting the entire invitation suite inside, and then we put a package on the outside. I might get them the option of designing a custom wrap, so it just looks a little bit nicer. So that's that same rigid mailer. And then, I give them that third option of, if I'm purchasing the stamps for them, I'll, curate some stamps for them and give them the options. Or if they're going to purchase stamps, even if they're doing semi-custom and I'm not mailing for them, I might recommend, some stamps that match with their suite regardless. And so, again, they can just choose which one they want to go with. And then the last upsell that I do is several months after we finished our invitations. I don't have this automated, but I definitely could automate it. I basically just have it as a template right now. So I check in with them a couple months before their wedding, after we've already sent out the invitations and they've gotten all of the praise from people of how great they look. I check in with them and see if they need anything for their ceremony or their reception. So I send them an overview of all of my offerings. I remind them that I can help them with anything from place cards to signage to cocktail napkins. And it's just very simple, like let me know if you want to set up a call, or just reply directly to let me know what items you're looking for, and I can give them an estimate. So that's my last opportunity that I use to upsell them, is for day of items. You can also do this for thank you cards after the wedding is over. That would work for really anybody in the wedding business: photographers, stationery designers, planners, right? If you found this episode helpful, you should definitely check out one of my earlier episodes. I'll link to it here, where I give specific advice on how to get more clients. So if that's something that you're struggling with, is getting clients in the first place, and you can't even think about potentially upselling them yet, definitely check out that episode. I'll link it below.